Alright guys, so we actually have a new ban list over here in the TCG. Didn't think I'd be making two Yu-Gi-Oh videos back to back, but well, if they're going to go ahead and drop a ban list, I guess I gotta talk about it. Spoiler alert, I've already seen all the cards that are getting hit or getting unhit, and I actually really like this ban list. It seems like the philosophy was to not just outright ban the Ishizu tier cards, but to unlock other cards that kind of hit the Ishizu tier deck and kind of unlock other strategies that may also kind of counter Ishizu tier. So I thought that was a very interesting way of kind of going about things. They're like, we clearly made this very OP deck in Ishizu tier, but that actually means that instead of banning these cards, we can unban other cards that are more in line with the current power level. So that I really do like. But before we actually get into this, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for Yu-Gi-Oh content. Do not forget to do that. But let's go ahead and start diving right into all of this. So first and foremost, it looks like they're going to be banning Curious, the Lightsworn Dominion, which is really good in Danger tier. The problem is that Danger tier is kind of like not the way they're playing the deck anymore. It's now Ishizu tier, and they pretty much pivoted off of the whole like Curious, dump a card, get it back with Nightmare Griffin, that whole strategy. They're kind of not doing that anymore. And this is kind of like a format too late because they've completely pivoted off the danger strategy as well. So with them not like playing that anymore, I don't really see why they're hitting Curious, unless maybe in like February when we get like the next ban list, because usually we get the ban list in like February, not December. So if they're going to still roll it out in February as well, maybe they're prepping to like hit some of the Ishizu tier cards like directly, and they don't want them pivoting back to the danger tier strategy. I'm not really sure, but you know, rip all my rogue strategies that were using Curious, and rip all my Lightsworn players that were still playing Curious. For like the two of you that were still out there, yeah, we lost Curious. So kind of a weird hit, but I think the most important hit is that they've banned Mystic Mine. Even though this card is seeing, I guess, a little bit less play this format, and it's not as much of a problem, still a problem, but not as much of a problem as it was the last format, it's still a card that I think needs to be banned because it's just not a very healthy card. It's not very fun to play against. It stalls out matches to insanely, you know, long duels, and especially if you're just like trying to draw like your one Cosmic Cyclone, you're trying to find your Duster in your deck, and then just happen to have like Judgment or something, and they just negate that as well. It's like, well, I just spent like 20 minutes getting decked out by mine. It's not very fun. It's just one of those cards that's very unhealthy, and they probably did need to not unban, but ban, because it's just not a fun card to go up against, and it's just very unhealthy for the state of the game. I'm glad that Konami finally listened to us. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen the memes of like, you know, the YCS of people just holding up Mystic Mine being like, please ban this card. This card sucks. Spoiler alert, Scythe is not on here either. Scythe is another one of those cards that's like very unhealthy for the game, and it's really only being played in like the Draco Slayer deck right now to my knowledge, and you know, that deck is okay. It's not really like tiered or anything. It's not like going up against Fluanderies or tier elements right now. It's one of those more rogue strategies, but I don't know, if somebody else finds like some insane Scythe lock strategy, they might have to go ahead and hit that, but for now I think Scythe is fine. Like, I don't think it's doing too much, but I am a little worried that someone's gonna find a way to break it. Moving into our limited section, I almost cried when I saw this morning. I'm like, first you guys took Ava away from me, and now you're taking away Herald of the Orange Light. What more can my Drytron deck do? Now I'm forced to do the turn skip, bro. It's so sad, but I understand why they had to hit this, because Herald of the Orange Light is really, really good in Ishizu tier. Basically, if you don't know what this card does, is you pitch this card and another fairy, and then you can negate a monster effect. So it's a hand trap that negates monster effects. The two that you mainly want to be hitting in Ishizu tier are Dimension Shifter and Abyss Dweller, because those basically end your turn, or they make it very, very hard to play, right? Because Dimension Shifter is basically Macrocosmos for 2 turns, and Dweller shuts down all graveyard effects. And so you would use Herald to pitch one of your other like Ishizu Fairy cards, plus off of that, and negate and destroy that other monster, right? So you could actually get rid of the Dweller if it was already on the board. You know, it was just really, really nice. So I understand hitting it to 1 is to limit that consistency and kind of remove some of the protection from Ishizu tier. And I believe some of the unlimits as well in the the unlimited section are also designed to inadvertently hit Ishizu tier, which again I kind of like. Moving on to the semi-limited, they brought Recital Starling back, which I understand, like, it's probably fine now, but I don't know, like, you could probably bring this card to 3, because Lyrillist Tri-Brigade only makes the 2 to go into Utopic Draco Future, right? Because you just overlay, you know, the F0 and then F0, like the UDF on top of that, to give yourself, like, a monster negate that also can, like, steal your opponent's monsters and is, like, not unaffected, but can't be destroyed by card effects and such, right? It's really nice. Maybe we'll see this played in like Sprite Tri-Brigade. Maybe they'll like run like a small like leerless package in there. I'm not really sure. But yeah, honestly, like I think this could have came off like a bit ago, just because Leerless Tri-Brigade is what that was like meta like almost a year ago at this point. It's not really up to snuff with like the Sprite and the TR Elements power creep that we have right now. But I don't know, maybe somebody will prove me wrong. Maybe somebody will play like Tri, Sprite, Lyrilisc, and it'll just be insanely broken or something. I don't know. Who knows, man? But yeah, honestly, this is perfectly fine. But then the semi-limits are where things get really interesting. Tomias is like finally coming back. Like that's, I feel like this could have come off like ages ago. I don't know why it's been gone for so long, so that's not as interesting. The more interesting ones are Di-Fi coming to 3 and Macro Cosmos coming to 3. That's because these cards, basically, if you don't know, they just say that any card that will go to the graveyard is banished instead, and they're both very, very good against Ishizu tier, because again, locking off the graveyard is insane because they need the graveyard to do like their fusions and to proc all of their effects, and it kind of ruins their mill strategy and just makes them go insanely minus instead of going insanely plus. So those being at 3, I think are Konami's way of inadvertently hitting the Ishizu tier cards without hitting the Ishizu tier cards, right? I'm of the opinion that tier elements are very similar to something like Dragon Rulers in the way that, you know, you can't just like hit one of the Dragon Rulers and like kill the deck, right? You have to like hit all of them because they're all just really, really good, and they all kind of do like generally the same thing with one unique effect, right? Tier elements are very similar where they all like mill and like they all fusion summon, so you kind of have to hit all of them if you want to actually put a dent in the deck. So instead of like just doing another Dragon Ruler style ban, you know, where they try to hit all of the tier elements, they're like, what if we introduce cards that actually counter tier elements, and now that the kind of meta is strong enough, it can handle these types of cards? And I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I like it. Let's see if it's too toxic or not. This actually should be like really good with Kashtira coming out. I believe they get all of their like main cards in Photon Hypernova, which should be in a couple of months over here in the TCG. So I'll look forward to seeing if people in Kashtira are going to be like main decking like Dimensional Fuser or Macrocosmos, because if you don't know what Kashtira does, they just banish everything and they like lock your opponent's zones out of the game. It's a pretty toxic deck, but then again, Ishizu also kind of just like merged that into their Ishizu tier strategy, so we'll see how all that goes. Metaverse going to 3 without Mystic Mind being in the game, I think this is fine, because what it also might allow you to do is you could Metaverse into like a Necro Valley on your opponent's turn, and that might be a little insane. Although I don't know, because Necro Valley hits more than just a Shizu tier, so we'll see if that's also going to be a problem from other players being like, I got Metaverse into Necro Valley for like the 8th game in a row. I'll see if that's actually a problem. And then Tenki again, you know, Tri-Brigade decks are like, yes, we love that. We can search our Tri-Brigade Fractal now. That's super sick. But this is probably going to come back like ages ago, right? It's like Tri-Brigade is kind of like fallen off a little bit. Like it's a little bit too fair of a deck to be like kind of considered in the current format. Like a non-target banish on your opponent's turn, while it is like pretty good, just that in and of itself is really, you know, not quite good enough for the current meta, honestly. So I'm kind of glad that they're like, okay, well, let's give Tri-Brigade their stuff back. So if you want to play this strategy, you can at least have a better fighting chance. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are there any decks that you think like, oh my goodness, it's going to be like a banishing Tri-Brigade strategy that's going to like now be in the meta? It's going to be insane. Like, let me know if you think anything like that is going to be like breaking the meta or something. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.